On that very night, she carried out her ultimate plan, a plan to avenge her family's banishment by the king. So, with the strength of the full moon, she used her devil powers to take control of the king's mind, making him run mad in the night, disturbing all the villagers as he paraded the streets in madness. As the villagers called for her spiritual assistance to cure the king of his madness, unknown to them that she was the cause, she prepared to destroy him in their presence once and for all. A long time ago, there was a village named Tokubo. The village was surrounded by palm trees and tall mountains, and there lived Amaka, a lady more beautiful than any woman in all of the land. Amaka was tall, with long legs and curvy hips. She was fair-skinned and had sparkling blue eyes and dark silky hair. She had an intoxicating, seductive scent that followed her wherever she went. Her beauty was not up for debate in her village, as all the men in the land, both married and unmarried, wanted to sleep with her. It was as if she casted a spell on any man who set his eyes on her. Other women hated her very much because she was a husband snatcher and their husbands weren't safe around her. Even the queen of the land, Adugo, was very careful when Amaka was in close proximity with her husband, King Salai. In fact, when she passed on the road, everyone paused to get a glimpse of her, like she was some sort of deity. She was loved and adored by both men and the gods, as at the age of 19, she was anointed the priestess of Tokubo land by Uzoma, the spiritual advisor to the king after the sudden passing of the late chief priest, late Kurik. You see, as for Kurik, when he was still alive, unlike other men, the late chief priest was the only man in the village who never liked Amaka. He was the only one who could sense her devilish nature, which was masked behind her beauty. So he always called her a witch or serpent, even when other men were wailing at her as she was passing on the road. But the bone of contention was that no one understood exactly why he hated her so much. What was more strange was the circumstances surrounding his death. You see, days before he died of his supposed sickness, he never showed any signs. In fact, he was bubbling with energy. Also, in the past, the chief priests would at least give a vague hint of their death and announce a successor in case anything were to happen to them. But this was not the case for Kurik. Amaka, who replaced him as chief priestess, was never announced by him as his successor. In fact, it was well known that he hated her. Rather, she was anointed and ordained by the spiritual advisor to the king instead, after his mysterious death because of necessity. When the villagers heard of everything that had happened with the late chief priest and how Amaka became the new chief priestess overnight, a chilling sense of fear and confusion crowded the village. The men who had slept with her didn't know how to feel about a loose woman being the servant of the gods, and the women of the village who formerly hated her for her perversiveness now had to accept the reality that they had to turn to her for spiritual guidance from henceforth. Everyone in the village became confused, well, except for Ngozi, a maiden in the village. You see, 6 months before Amaka became the chief priestess, Amaka had a friend named Ngozi, and one day, late at night, while they were gossiping, she told her her goal of becoming king of Tokubo land. Ngozi was a fair, beautiful maiden who was a bit older than Amaka, and she also slept with men in the village, but wasn't as powerful and well known as Amaka, which made her jealous, but somehow she became friends with her. That night, Ngozi heard of Amaka's plan to be king, and she laughed out loud and told Amaka that she was just a dreamer. The king has 5 sons of marrying age that would readily take his throne even if something unfortunate were to happen to him. And of course, you know our village has never had a female king before. It's unheard of. Ngozi responded to Amaka, I am fully aware of this, so I have devised a way of bypassing all these bridges to attain my ultimate goal, Amaka said. Ngozi then asked Amaka what her plan was. She then told Ngozi that she plans on getting the gods involved and forcing their hand to crown her king against their will. But how? Ngozi asked. By doing what I always do best, playing with men, Amaka said. Amaka then told Ngozi that she planned to become the priestess of the land first, and to do so she would need Ngozi's help. The next day, Amaka took Ngozi to a secret bush path that led to an evil forest. And as Ngozi followed her, she consistently asked with a shaky, scared voice, "Where are we going? Where are we going?" as she began breathing heavily and fast, out of fear of the forest. But Amaka would comfort her by telling her not to worry, that they were almost there. And before you know it, they arrived at an ominous body of water that had no source in the middle of the forest. "Where are we, and how is there a pool of water with no source in the middle of this strange forest?" Ngozi asked. Amaka then began narrating. 10 years ago, when I was just a little girl, me and my parents were banished from this land because my father couldn't afford to pay his monthly tributes to the king. We were banished to this forest without any of our belongings. As the months passed, my parents and little brother were all wiped out by the wild animals in this forest, and I was the only one who remained. And somehow, I crawled my way out and found myself in this very spot we are standing in. Wait. You told me that you grew up an orphan child inside the village, that you never knew your mom or dad," Ngozi interrupted. "Yes, I lied," Amaka replied her, as Ngozi's eyes sunk in with the feeling of fear and betrayal. Amaka then continued, "As I arrived this spot in the forest, almost lifeless, the goddess of the helpless and forgotten, Asantra, appeared from this body of water and found me. Seeing my hopeless state, she asked me to narrate my story to her as to why I was in this condition, and so I told her everything, from the king's banishment of my family to the demise of my parents. My story drove the goddess to tears and angered her so much so that she decided to help me. And on that day, with her goddess powers, she quickened my body. My skin that was once dirty and rough became smooth and began glowing. My crooked teeth and nose became straight, and my black eyes turned bright blue. She had turned me into the most beautiful girl in the whole world, and in her own words, as long as I am the most beautiful girl in the world, I would never ever be helpless, and no man will ever cast me away as they did to my family. It was the goddess who taught me how to seduce men and use pleasure to control them. But because she loved me so much, she also gave me an extra power." "What do you mean, an extra power?" Ngozi asked. "On the night of the full moon, when the goddess's might is at its peak, I am equipped with an incredible power, a power that enables me to control the minds and bodies of the last 5 men I slept with just my mind." Amaka, how many times did I call your name? Which kind of talk is this? Which one is goddess and power and controlling men? What is all this you are telling me? You are really scaring me, you. I want to go home, please. Take me home now," Ngozi exclaimed. "I can't do that," Amaka responded. "I brought you here because I need your help, Ngozi. In order to bring down the chief priest and take his place, I need you to do something for me, and then I'll be one step closer to becoming king." "What is that?" Ngozi asked. "First, you must promise me you won't scream," Amaka responded. And as Ngozi was about to ask why, a floating figure of a beautiful and mysterious woman appeared. It was the goddess of the helpless and forgotten, Asantra. Ngozi's mouth froze in fear as she struggled to comprehend what her eyes were saying, but the goddess comforted her with a soothing, calm voice. "Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. Amaka has told me so many good things about you, and today I am here to give you the power of beauty." Ngozi's heart calmed down as she heard the goddess's words, and she bowed her head and was blessed with a similar beauty as Amaka by the goddess. Amaka then told her that she now has the power to control the last 5 men she had slept with. This her new power would be instrumental in taking down the chief priest. The following morning, Amaka took Ngozi to the house of one of the king's spiritual advisors, Uzoma. Now, Uzoma was a deceitful man who loved money and women and could easily be swayed by either. So when Amaka promised to give him her body for 2 nights, he agreed to help her take down Kurik and become the new chief priestess. So while they were at his house, he explained to Amaka and Ngozi that as long as Kurik dies without announcing a successor, the duty of announcing the new chief priest will fall to his hands, and then he will be able to declare Amaka the new chief priestess. All they needed to do was to eliminate him first. Ngozi then asked Amaka how she planned to do this, and how this her new special power played into all of this. Amaka then explained that the legends say that no single man can face the chief priest in combat and survive, that it would take at least 10 men to defeat him. Amaka then said that she plans on sleeping with 5 strong men before the end of the week, including Uzoma, and also advised Ngozi to do the same, so that with their combined powers, they would have the control of 10 able-bodied men to ambush the chief priest Kurik during the night before the New Yam festival, because that was the next time the moon would be full. Ngozi reluctantly accepted Amaka's offer, and so when the day came, they both commanded an army of 10 able-bodied men that marched into Kurik's shrine and overpowered him and stripped him. Now, as the 10 men held him down, he started making incantations to summon the power of the gods to come to his aid. But immediately, Amaka rushed and forced herself on him, pinning him so that his covenant with the gods would be broken, and immediately he was struck dead by the gods. The following morning, before the New Yam festival began, Uzoma broke the news to the king of the chief priest's demise and told both the king and the elders that his body was found lifeless in his shrine with no bruises to suggest it was an assassination, but rather saying that Kurik died of a strange illness. The king believed his most senior spiritual advisor Uzoma and asked him to name a successor for Kurik, as he was the only one capable of doing such in the village. And just as planned, Kurik named Amaka, the most beautiful maiden in all the land, as the new chief priestess. Immediately, the king sent for Amaka to be brought to the palace so that she would be immediately anointed and officially begin her duty as the new chief priestess. But as she arrived at the palace, the king locked eyes with her, and he could feel her seductive nature and could smell that Amaka was dangerous from her aura. But he had no choice. His hands were tied, so he went ahead and anointed her as the new chief priestess, unknown to him that he had just signed his own death warrant. Now 6 months would have passed since Amaka's ordination, and during this period there was a crippling fear and confusion that gripped the land. No one felt safe in their homes because the king had apparently gone mad. He had ordered an impromptu tax increase on his subjects, and these tax proceeds of livestock and foodstuffs were to be 100% remitted to the chief priestess chambers, which was Amaka's house. The king had made a new decree also that any person who offends the chief priestess would be banished, and within a span of 6 months, he had banished all his sons and imprisoned his first wife Adugo because they all criticized his newfound affection for the office of the chief priestess. He was acting like he was under a spell. Many accused Amaka for bewitching the king and making him do her bidding, if only they knew how right they were. You see, a week after Amaka's ordination, she cunningly started inviting the king over to the village's shrine, pretending that the gods had something to tell him. When he would get there, she would instruct him to send the guards home, as it was the will of the gods that they be alone. Once they were alone, she would seduce him with her intoxicating beauty and make love with him passionately. And as time passed, she started coming over to the palace in the night and making love with the king in his secret quarters. It wasn't long till the king completely fell in love with her and started doing whatever she had asked for in order to please her. Their affair spanned for about 6 months, and during this period, Amaka was the most powerful person in all the land. But she wasn't done yet, as she planned to take the throne from the king entirely. On one fateful night, she set out to carry out her ultimate plan. You see, Amaka had been bribing the guards and other elders with the foodstuffs and livestock taxes the king gave her, so she had bought their loyalty away from the king secretly. On that fateful night of the full moon, she used her power to command the king to behave like a mad person and run around the village naked. That night, a noise could be heard on the village streets. When the villagers woke up to check who was making the noise, lo and behold, it was the great King Salah, naked and mad. He ran around disturbing the whole village throughout the night, and at first the villagers were too scared to take action on the king because he was royalty. But soon after, their patience grew weak, and they invited the elders and chief priestess Amaka to do something about the king's condition. When Amaka arrived, she proclaimed to the people that the king had offended the gods, and so the gods had struck him with madness as his punishment. The people were in shock. She then told the people that she would try to plead with the gods on the king's behalf. So she instructed the guards to hold down the king and then pretended that she was trying to lay hands on the king's head as a sort of deliverance. But in that moment, she quietly and cunningly commanded the king to stop breathing with her seductive power. And helpless as King Selai was, he stopped breathing and started gasping for air. All the people watched as tears began coming out of the king's eyes as he gasped desperately for air. But to no avail. Amaka's enchantment was too strong, and all of a sudden, the loud gasping turned to a crippling silence, and the king's soul left his body. Amaka hid her face as she silently smiled, knowing that her plan has come to full fruition. She had finally avenged her father's banishment by the king, by banishing the king from this world. The elders, already knowing what was going on, then confirmed to the people that the gods had killed the king for the evil he had committed. And in that moment, they declared the only person qualified to wield the throne, as the king's wife and children had been imprisoned and banished. They declared Amaka, the chief priestess, as the new king of Tokubo land. As they removed the crown from the dead king's head and placed it on Amaka's head, all the villagers bowed as the elders screamed, "All hail the new king! All hail Amaka!" Amaka's eyes were filled with immense joy and satisfaction. But Ngozi, her friend, who was in the crowd, knowing the truth about all that had happened, only looked at Amaka in disgust for what she has become and regretted ever helping her commit such grave acts. Thank you if you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed part 1 of this video and you want a part 2 to be made, comment part 2 in the comments, and also leave your favorite part of the story and what you learned down below. Like and subscribe to the channel for more, and we'll see you on the next video.